Here's a story. That's not the story I wanted. It's over there. Good. All right. This week's Torah portion talks about circumcision. Here's a story about circumcision. I have a good friend. His name is Herzl Borochov. Herzl Borochov, the Borochov family. They live in Rehovot. He tells a story. This story must have happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago. He used to go around with tefillin, like all Chabad people do, or they try to do, and put tefillin on people in the streets. Especially, he went to the area of Rehovot where there are all these stores and they say the working areas where there are garages for working on cars, and they work on metal work, and everybody has their own store, glass, things like that. And he would go and he would put tefillin on people in the street. There was one place where the people that worked there, it was called the Kadoshim family. That was a family. And they did car repair, auto repair. The wife, she did the hard work. I guess she was stronger than the husband. He took care of the paperwork. That's what he told the story. So we went and he put on so he went and asked them if they wanted to put on tefillin. So they said okay, and he saw and noticed the man, of course, if he wanted to put on tefillin. So he put on tefillin, and the Rabbi Borochov noticed that this Mr. Kadoshim, that he was a little bit sort of sad, worried. So he got into a conversation. He knew them. He knew these people, but he knew them like from afar. He would say hello to them, whatever. He never really had a conversation with them. So he said, I see you're a little bit worried. Is there a problem? Well, Rabbi, not really. So they said, well, tell me what it is. So they said, well, they have a son that he's already, was it 14 years old, 15 years old, and he stopped growing. He stopped growing. He's like maybe 3 feet tall as he was when he was like 2 years old, and he just stopped growing. He just doesn't grow. He doesn't know what to do. They don't know what to do, and he's going to school. All the other children are growing, and once in a while somebody says a word to him, and they make fun of him, and this, that. And the son is miserable, and they're miserable, and they don't know what to do. So Rabbi Borochov, he also, his main sort of occupation is he has this place where people come and ask questions or write letters to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Igros Kodesh. So I take it back. This story must have happened about 20 years ago. 20 years ago. And so they there's the Rebbe has like 30, 40 books of letters that have been compiled by his pupils, the letters that the Rebbe wrote to people. That's a small fraction of the letters that the Rebbe wrote, but they're letters. So they print these letters, and the letters are very interesting. The letters, a lot of times they explain what the problem was, what the question was. Sometimes they leave the name of the person out who wrote the letters, and sometimes, but very interesting answers. The Rebbe has answers, amazing answers, and he brings all sorts of amazing sources from all the books in the Torah, Kabbalah and Midrash, and books that nobody even heard of before. And he writes those answers to great, Talmudic scholars and to the Kabbalists, and the Rebbe gives answers to all these people. So he said, I'll write a letter telling that your son is very short, and that he's not growing, and what do the doctors say? The doctors don't know what to do. They don't know what. It seems that all of his hormones are okay and everything. They just don't understand. Doctors don't understand it. So let's write a letter to the Rebbe. So they wrote a letter. He wrote a letter, and Rabbi Borochov, I guess next week or whatever it was, they went to his house. They put a letter in the books of letters of the Rebbe, and they opened up the book, and there it's a letter to somebody about a circumcision. That he has to make sure that his circumcision was proper, and that his circumcision was done according to a Jew and a Jewish more, because a lot of people, they make circumcisions for health purposes in the hospital, and it's done by a non-Jew. Okay, so, and that's not a good circumcision. It has to be good. So he said to Mr. Kadoshim, did your son have a circumcision? So the husband looks at the wife, and the wife looks at the husband, and they say yes. So it's like furtive looks they're giving one to the other. Yes, was there any problem? No, there's no problem with the circumcised. So his wife says, really, there was a problem. What's the problem? He said, well, we were in France, and they were, I guess these were Moroccan Jews or whatever, Tunisian Jews. They lived in France. And when the boy was born, so France, the Jews are very assimilated over there. So when the boy was born, so their friends influenced them not to make a circumcision the old-fashioned way, to bring a religious Jew and to circumcise the child. And it has to be done with anesthetic, and it has to be done in sterile conditions. It has to be done by a proper doctor, and that knows what he's doing. And this, the Jews have been circumcising their children by a rabbi in, for since the time of Abraham. Well, let's say since the time of the Torah was given, over 3,000 years, and it's very rare that anything negative happened. But anyways, so they convinced them. So they made a circumcision in the hospital. The doctor made it under anesthetic. Was the doctor Jewish? Was it not Jewish? Not Jewish. So he said, if so, your son has not been properly circumcised. So you have a circumcision. So they said, one second, Rabbi. We asked the question about our son growing. What possible connection can it have? I mean, there's a little of it, him as it is. There's not, he wants to be more of him. You want to take off part of him. What's this got to do with our son growing? And Rabbi Boruchov said, listen, I don't know. But we asked the Igros Kodesh, and that's what we found. And in fact, I mean, let's say there's no connection, but your son has to be circumcised properly, even if there's no connection whatsoever. But if the Rebbe wrote this, there must be a circumcision. So they said, okay, so we'll talk to him about it. So they talked to him, and the next week, whatever, Rabbi Boruchov saw them, and he said, what happened? He said, Rabbi, our son no way is willing to make a circumcision. No way. He says he suffered enough in the situation that he's in, and that he's short, and he refuses to make a circumcision. There's no way he's not going to do it whatsoever. And there was yelling and screaming, and he refused, not going to make the circumcision. So Rabbi Boruchov said, okay, what can we do? We can pray, just, suggest it to him, tell him about the letters, the Rebbe, and this. Maybe that'll have help. But I guess you have to do it gradually, don't make a big deal if he's not going to do it, so we can't force him. Okay. So that's it. So Rabbi Boruchov went about his business and he saw the Kadosh. He had a lot of other people to deal with and everything. And he saw the Kadoshim, but he didn't mention anything about it. And that's it. He lost contact with the Kadoshim family. Lost contact, but didn't see them. One day he's walking down the street. He told me the story. One day he's walking down the street. One day he's walking down the street, and he hears somebody yelling, Rabbi, Rabbi, hey, Rabbi, Rabbi. And he turns around, and there's Mr. Kadoshim, 10 years later. He says, oh, Mr. Kadoshim, you recognize me? He says, oh, Rabbi, you recognize me? You remember me? Yes. Well, why haven't you been coming around to the store? He says, yeah, I'm really sorry. He says, well, I bought tefillin. I'm putting on tefillin every day. You convinced me it was a good thing, and I did it. He said, tell me, what about your son? Did he make the circumcision? Said, oh, yes, Rabbi, yes. He decided he was going to make the circumcision. He decided he would do it. And we went to a rabbi, and the rabbi, we thought, he would just have to, like you said, just take a little drop of blood. But the rabbi said no, that the circumcision wasn't even proper, that he had to redo the whole circumcision. It wasn't cut properly. And he agreed. He did it under anesthetic, local anesthetic, and we did the circumcision, and he agreed. So that's good. So it was good that you came, and they're very good. And Rabbi Baruch said, but what about his size? Did he grow? I said, oh yeah, we didn't think about that. He said, well, just a couple months after the circumcision, he started growing. He said, "No, you should see him. He's like 6'2". He's a big, he weighs like 200 pounds. He says he's working. He's in the army. He's in the engineers in the army." He says, "Wow, he's really big." Yeah, we didn't even think about that. So Rabbi Boruchov said that here we see something that appears to be non-connected totally. What being circumcised have to do with growing physically? But the fact is that the circumcision has an effect on the world. When God made a circumcision, told Abraham that made him the father of all nations. So it had an actual physical effect on the world. How this worked with this growing with this, I don't ask me. I have no idea. But nevertheless, that we see that the circumcision worked and that the letters of the Rebbe also worked. The letters of the Rebbe also worked, even though there was ways that we can't not possibly understand. But when we look at it closely, we see basically we don't understand anything. We don't understand why we maintain to be alive and why we breathe and why we think and why this is just miracles. There they are. So up in the upper world somehow or other, there's connections that make sense out of this whole business. And it seems that the Rebbe is privy to these connections. And so will we all be with the arrival of the Mashiach right now, that Be'ez Hashem, God will reveal the covenant that he has with the Jewish people and with the whole entire world. That's what we learned last week with the rainbow that he put in the sky. Have a good day with Mashiach now. We'll talk, God willing, tomorrow, Yom at 8:15.